večer. Sem pa prav vesela, da vidim toliko obrazov. Ste zelo pogumne, ste tako vsebino filma prišli pogledati, ker ni jih najlažja vsebina. Da začnem, bom samo vprašala, je v redu, če govorim po slovensko, ali nekdo želi, is it okay if I speak Slovenian, or some people will need English?
Yeah, I don't understand that.
Okay, so we'll do it in English. Okay. So I was just saying that I'm really happy to see so many people, because it's kind of not the easiest movie night to plan to go out. Thank you, and because they said in the beginning, we are in the kind of special setup here, because there's the scenography of the Trans of Remembrance, which is still hanging here, so the victims of this year. I think after watching a movie like this and being in that setup, it's quite emotional. It's quite strong. So I just wanted to maybe have kind of 10 seconds of silence just to begin for all the people that felt this year because of transphobia and violence against transgender people, because it's kind of the same people that we saw this year. Quite short, but I wanted to take this time. So I will start by presenting myself. I'm Leo Aymard. I'm coming from France, but I'm living here in Slovenia now 13 years. I am working in the movie and television film industry. So I'm camera operator, editor, and I happen to be also a trans woman, which made me the perfect person to somehow speak for this event. Although I don't really think I'm white. The movie we were watching is setting up in America, so it's kind of different society, but the same problematic as here. Except here it's no, we're not talking about here in Slovenia, we are hardly talking about black transgender women. But still the process and what we see happening in the movie, the discriminations and the juridic system, the failure of the administration to recognize identity of transgender people, and then putting them in that kind of situation when you get double or triple in English, where you get casting. Penalty, yeah, when you get 2 times or 3 times penalty because of who you are and who you represent in the society. All these things are here, except we don't have the same kind of demography and the same kind of population, so it's not expressing on the same way. But be sure that even though that kind of things are not really happening here in Slovenia, like on a systematic level for, once again, black trans women here, there's none of them, but there's transgender people, there's also sex worker transgender people, there's people that are not from Slovenia, and all that kind of parameters are still playing in the same kind of way as depicted in the movie. I happened to work also in prison when I was in France, so I had the opportunity to see from close what kind of the things that are explained in the movie, like the system, how the prison is working and how the administration of the prison is working. And it's quite hard for people that never been in prison to represent themselves that kind of problematic, but it's once again it's a place where discrimination that you can see on the society, they are kind of pushed to their extremity, and it's very obvious. It's very strong to see how justice is really not has no place in prison, especially when you are from some minority. I think if you came to see the movie, you know, of course, about transgender people. I won't talk about this. I won't also talk about the movie as a film, because actually it's a little to say. It's a documentary. It's very basic on the way how it's done, because it's mostly talking heads. So we see people, gallery of people that are talking about their own experience. It's what I can say on the formal level about the documentary is that it's not really trying to discover some new things. It's more a documentary that is here to speak up what is impossible to say anywhere else. And so it's a kind of classic independent documentary with the kind of distribution system that is very close. So you have to be able to have the luck to be at the moment where it's shown. It's not, of course, something you will see everywhere or that will be shown on television. And the reason why is because it's very subversive. It's very pointing out something that is heavily problematic. It's really like it's again, it's a kind of crime against humanity, which is just, it happened to be seen as a normal system, and healthy system. So it's very subversive in what it says, of course. That's it what I wanted to say about the documentary by itself. I just wanted now to open a little discussion, because I think it's a lot of talk. It's a lot about it. It's a lot. We have to talk a lot about what we saw, but I don't want to make like didactical presentation. So I'm really looking for your reaction about the movie, what you are feeling, and what you were thinking about when it ends, and what is staying with you after that documentary. So the most courageous person in the room can start.
me as a surprise, because coming from Brazil, the transgender situation there is maybe even worse than in the US, as far as I hear, for whole LGBT community, not only transgender people. But at the same time, it never ceases to be so frustrating and desperating. I mean, I know this kind of situation. I've lived all my life in this sort of environment in my home country. But it's always so frustrating to think that even with justice, the justice system, you don't really get anything, you don't get anywhere, you can really count on anyone. There is this ghost of loneliness that always accompanies you as an LGBT person. And but that's how I felt about the movie. As I said, it's not a surprise, but at the same time, it's always so despairing, because we think maybe things are getting better. We are getting more, let's say we are making a bigger noise each time. We are coming to be more acknowledged, also in the academic community, the medical academic community, but still there is such a long way to go. And we need always to grab whatever hope we have to keep going.
Thank you.
That's how I felt. I don't know how the situation is here in European countries, if it's slightly better, or anyone who would like to head up to that.
I think yes, here in Slovenia it's which is quite different. It's also the demographic characteristics of Slovenia is anyway small, so everything is kind of smaller. But in Europe, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I come from France. I know during the beginning of my transition, I was not feeling safe at all in France. I think it's the case in a lot of bigger countries than Slovenia, but still not at all. I mean, when we see where the names come from, it's quite clear that here in Europe is anyway a little somebody else maybe to.
Well, I personally was very shocked at the fact that how many of the trans women had to be, raped before they actually took some action. Because I thought that, because they had to pass a no rape law in prisons, I never would have imagined that there actually would need to be a law against that. It's something that's logical, but it's not supposed to be allowed. That was very shocking to me that they actually had to make a special law just because of that.
Yeah, that's the backside of the justice, of the punishing system that is prison, and it's actually what I saw in France again was not that kind of prison that are shown there, but still the techniques are quite the same from the from the guards and from the staff, from the administration actually, because they are dealing with they have their methods of isolating completely, the peoples there, which is sometimes very close. It's like managing the violence by the violence, the kind of things that you heard that they deal actually the guards are a part of the whole system that is making transgender people then victims is quite. I'm quite sure that it's happening in every prison. In every prison, they are playing who go with who in the cells and how many people they put in the cells and all that kind of things. It's like a way how to control people and to make what they think the people should get. So it's, as Foucault said, I mean, the prison is really not a place where the justice should be done. It's a place of punishment, and it's very clear in the movie that you see that this is the place of punishment, and here transgender people, and especially black women, transgender women, are the last people that on whom everybody turns. Please.
Oh no, it was just.
Oh, okay. I'm
you know, here.
Anybody else? Also, if you have, you don't need to have like some comments. You can do some question or whatever about thematic or.
It's more maybe a legal, technical question, but after these people went out of prison, did they sue the government or in general for the violence they have suffered, or just went out?
You mean the people that are shown?
Yes.
I mean that Tsitsi did too, and the other. I mean, it's like a few people did. But yeah, it's an exception. It's an exception, and it's, from what I know, it's such heavy work to fill a case, and you have to kind of prove that you have to prove by default something that nobody wanted to see in the first place. So it's quite. I think it's one of the most great things that you can do after being such a long time in that repressive system. It's very ironic. And anybody has an idea, maybe what could be done actually that we couldn't fight that kind of system. Anybody has any thought about this, or does it seem to you like some fatality, like some things society just like this?
I think that first it's very important to talk about these things. For example, I came from Italy, and some years ago one guy went in prison because he sold drugs, marijuana, and he died after 4 days in prison because some guys beat on him. And now a movie on Netflix came out in Italy, and we are talking about this thing all over again, because for the first years also the politician didn't want to talk about it because it was he sold drugs, so somehow he deserved to die. But for example, making movies and talk about these things, I think is one of the most important things, helpful things that you can do for just starting the conversation.
But I must admit, I really wonder what is the situation with, when you compare the prison systems, right? America is really super special with that. I mean, being mostly focused on retribution. So I mean, looking from the context, unfortunately I'm not so surprised, but I really wonder in which ways are those topics and the way administration deals with that are covered in more prison-wise progressive countries, the countries that more turn towards the restitutional models or the treatment models in that way, because I would say that the situation is quite better there when it comes to that. So this, I'm just trying to say that the system model is also the one that is kind of creating the violence of its own, because when you look at all this bullshit that somehow is going on in American prisons, considering, well, I mean, we cannot really talk about any human rights in that context, really.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the specifics of in the prison by itself and the LGBT population, and especially trans people, is that we somehow fall out of not out of the law, but out of a kind of social law that gives you privilege of human rights, which is kind of written in the Constitution if you search a little bit, but for some people it's not enough. Actually, I think that the one thing that is quite despairing here is really like the prison model and the punishment ideology that is obviously not working, at least not for what the society is expecting from the prison, which should be make people not dangerous anymore for society. Well, it's very logically, but it makes the opposite. It makes people more dangerous at the end of the day. And I think that it would be quite idealist, it would be quite not realistic to hope that the societies could change the way how they treat the people that think are a treat for society, and comes to more human kind of treatment. But still, I think that a lot of the injustice that we saw in the movie, it could be avoided very easily by just giving the basic rights to people to have to the legal gender recognition, because if at least the people were going to prison, but in the prison that fits their gender, we could avoid like a huge part of that nightmare for the people, and this is very it seems very easy and close now, at least in some country, to put that on the constitutional level, and to at least have that kind of protection for transgender people, at least to get access to medical care that fits their needs, and to be recognized by society just as the gender they are. This would be like almost it would be big step forward. Any other thought about this thematics or the movie?
Maybe just, sorry, No, maybe just to add, I mean, because there are some, I think that there for sure are some things that might help with the whole situation. I mean, there are some solutions recognized, right? And I'm quite sure that one of them is for sure educating, and well, next to it for sure some external supervision in a way over the whole process of basically the first levels of prosecution. So basically it all starts at court. And when you look at all this data that was being presented in a way of how prejudiced the legal system is, that is for sure something that can also prevent a lot of this shit that is happening after that.
Yeah, I mean, if the people were included in society in the first place, it surely shows that discrimination that they were because of their gender. I mean, it's for I don't know half or way more than half the reason why they came to that place then. So yeah, I think that this is very the most effective thing that it could be done. It would be to be able to offer to people in society like the basic rights to be recognized that they are and to be included.
I also see, like, I mean, yeah, it starts, I mean, it already starts in the court. Before that, it already starts on the street with the police, with like with these things that, like legal gender recognition. If these things, you know, would be implemented, and if these things would be different, already there, things would stop. I mean, the one person in the video said, as soon as they realize that I'm transgender, their attitude totally changed. So this is already the moment where everything, I mean, not the moment, probably the moment is before that, because a lot of times it happens that because of situation that you are in, either because you need to survive or because somebody attacks you because you are transgender. So, I mean, there are so many layers that affect, you know, how, and I mean, I still have to kind of gather all the thoughts that I have about the film, but we opened so many things, and I also, I was wondering now, I don't watch Orange is the Blue Black. I stopped quite early, but like how also these kind of series, let's put, I don't know, I know that they're like trying to make certain things visible, but also how they minimize what's the reality, in a sense of, let's watch it and also have some fun with it, but this is the reality. Maybe not in Slovenia in a sense because we have different justice system, or, you know, but still, like, how important it is to show this, what is actually happening there, and not make, you know, something out of it. As I'm saying, I haven't watched it, so maybe I'm doing it injustice by saying these things, but like, to be also sensible and sensitive enough to how to present these topics when it comes to pop culture, whatever, how you call it, because I think that a lot of times this is also how we, let's say I will speak for myself, I think that it's also how it's like, okay, now I feel better because a little bit of my guilt, not doing enough on an everyday basis or not thinking all of these things, because it's like, okay, so I kind of grasp the idea, and like I'm washing my hands in this sense. So I think I don't know. There are just like fragments. I have like a lot of things in my head, but they're just a couple of thoughts that kind of.
Yeah, I mean, the documentary is so focused on this denouncing discrimination, and it's quite hard to watch it without feeling guilty, because it looks so irrational in some way, and I guess, I don't know, I was at least feeling that I was kind of feeling guilty for just being a part of that kind of society, you know, that is producing that kind of things. About what you told, the way how the different kind of parameters that exclude you, I mean, that makes you a target, are playing off. Of course, I was not living what was shown there, like far away, thank God. But I was just able to see how the legal gender recognition can had influence on my life, and how the fact that I was not from Slovenia and so I was here kind of stranger, and the two things combined with the fact that my family situation changed between in transition, I got divorced, and you know all the things, and then you know about job is like kind of, I was also not able to maintain my activity, and all that kind of things suddenly, which is one by one something that you say, well, I mean, it happened. I mean, it's just like it's treatable, it's doable to go over this. But if all that kind of things happen at once, and you are discriminated, a little discrimination, like little by little, but because a lot of different causes, then you got a situation that is very quickly very hard to manage, because at least from my experience, to not be able to prove my identity when I was trying to get my majors, or trying to get a flat, a place to live, or whatever, is kind of, it makes the things harder. And when you are already in a situation where you're trying to rescue yourself and to go through some hard times, it can make the things completely impossible. I cannot imagine to be in that situation without the help of my family, like the financial help, the help, like the moral help. And I still, when I'm watching the people that are in the movie, I'm just like, are these people human? Because I found it so hard for myself, and when I see the people that are going through such 10,000 times more violent and that are completely isolated, like completely alone, it's like it's completely crazy. I cannot imagine how hard it is for one to live that, and at the same time it's very horrifying to watch this, and yeah. So I completely agree with you, Tadeja. That was the conclusion.
Do you know, let's hear about the law here in Slovenia, about, let's say, if, in you're in transition, you're a trans woman, and on your ID, it still says you're a man. And if you here in Slovenia, if you commit a law, then if you have to go to prison, here do you know if they will still put you with the male population or the female population?
This I don't know. I mean, I think it would be mostly based on the gender that you have on your documents. I think that's help me people from.
There's been cases of both. So people going into prison based on their documents where they should go, and people going into facilities where they shouldn't be. And I think it also has, I mean, we have very little cases documented on this, but if I would draw like a very basic correlation, the people that I know that definitely didn't go into a facility that were trans women and went into men's prisons, they were foreigners.
Probably because it makes things harder to establish then the identity of the person.
I don't know. We try to get in touch with them or through the prison, but we were denied.
I mean, it's probably like in anything in relation with transgender people in Slovenia. It's quite not. It's I think on the state level, it's just not existing. So I think every kind of situation can happen because it's completely up to the people that are at that place at that moment. That would be the answer. But I can try actually. I can try to have an experiment. To see where it goes. No, it was a shock. We are done with the question and everything. I will just thank you again for being here. It's very important. I'm very happy. Besides that sad thematic. So I don't know when will be the next event here.
Kavarniški večer in 14 days, 6th of December.
Okay, 6th of December, so see you there at the moment and have a nice night.